What is going on, golf fans? It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 4 live stream for the Mexico Open. Here we're going to break down the prop and betting side and get you ready for all of your exposure out there for Sunday. So any questions, feel free to go ahead and throw those down to the live chat. And wherever you guys are, hopefully you're having a fantastic Saturday. We had some golf on today. Obviously our sweats out there for tomorrow, but some UFC lineups that I'm sweating as well. So going to keep this one to 30 minutes so I can get back to watching those fights. But cheers to all of you out there. We got a little bit of whiskey out there in the cup as well, and it's 4 roses this time around. It's a double barrel. It's a little bit of a higher ABV whiskey, but it's one of the more flavorful that I've had out there as well. So cheers to all of you wherever you guys are, and we'll go ahead and hop on in here in a second out there into all the action out there for Sunday. I've got to say, when it's the higher ABV, definitely has a little bit of that tingle in the back of your throat, but the flavor profile more than makes up for it. Let's go through what we saw out there for moving day, which today actually was slightly harder conditions, but for the first 2-3 hours of play, it was tracking for around a minus 2.8 scoring average. The real key difference, of course, was the wind, which got a lot spicier in the afternoon than what they were calling for last night. Now, in the morning, I did put out a little bit of a tweet over there on my Twitter, giving you guys an update over there on the weather, and the forecast got a whole lot more windy out there for the afternoon. So it wasn't so much a surprise. In fact, so much so that I went out there and faded greens for a few of those later starters. So if you take a look at the morning versus the afternoon, it was quite the discrepancy when it came to the scoring. In fact, a whole 0.6 stroke difference between the first and second half. And considering that it was threesomes off of both tees, it's very surprising that we had that big of a difference. Your birdie average, though, went down because of the windy conditions in the afternoon. Your bogey average, though, also went down compared to the first few rounds. So really the main difference when it came to the scoring mostly came down to the birdie average, when it went down from about 4.6 to 4.3 per round. But your bogey average also went down from about 4.75 per round to about 0.3 lower there at 2.47. So, there were some differences after having that cut line, right? The higher tier players, the guys that weren't as much of slapdicks, weren't making nearly as many bogeys as what you saw out there for the first few days, but some tough pin locations and that wind kicking up made the difference with birdies. Now, looking at the Sunday forecast, it looks a little bit calmer than what we had for round number 3. So at least if you trust these models that we have here at windy.com, in the morning, it looks just as calm as what you had for today. So that -2, -3 scoring average is certainly in play for those hours. But even if we take a look at all of them together, so we'll bring up all 4 forecasts that we have down here for Vidanta, Vallarta, you can see that 2 of them are calling for some wind. That would be this ECM model, then this media blue down there at the bottom. But this icon at GFS, the other 2 out of the 4, are calling for sub 7-8 miles an hour wind for pretty much the entire day. And even this ECM and media blue model are only calling for it to get to 8 to 10 miles an hour. If you guys were watching play today, if you can take a look at the data golf stuff and what they observed for the weather, it was closer to 13 to 16 miles an hour of sustained wind. So obviously a lot more significant than what they're calling for in these models, which the weathermen have been wrong a million times before. They're going to be wrong a million times going forward. But based on what we see here over here on these forecasts, I would think that the scoring might get a little bit lower out there for tomorrow. Now, the real X factor that could determine the scoring average is going to come down to those pin locations, which I'll say out there for round 3. As I mentioned yesterday on the live stream, there were definitely some moving day pins, but you also had some really tricky pin locations, including that hole number 5, that par 3 that was tucked over the bunker that I thought they might move up the tee box on. They didn't do that, right? They left it over there tipped out. So I would argue that the pin locations could actually get a little bit easier over there for tomorrow. But, we're going to take the guessing game out of it here in just a minute. We're going to go through all those pin locations together. I'm not 100% sure that the PGA Tour Comms has tweeted it yet, but there's a good chance that sites like Draftkings over here on Fanduel have already started to load it in. In fact, let's go ahead and see if they've done that over here for round number 4. And yesterday, they were a little bit slower to get around to this. But yeah, it looks like they have these pin locations loaded in. So it's not going to be quite what we're used to when it comes to coming through these pin locations, but we'll bring up the slopes. We're going to have to go from tab to tab to go through all of these because they haven't quite been published yet. But if you haven't already figured it out, sites like DraftKings, Fanduel, these really big sports books, they get sent them ahead of time, which is I don't have an issue with it by any means, but it is a suspect, at least to some extent, I would say. Let's get the hole 10. It's starting us on hole number, hole 1 we want to get to. It's starting us over there at hole number 10. Okay, so there's hole number 1, like we wanted to get to. And let me see if there's anyone down there in chat. By the way, any deep dives you guys want on props, bets, anything like that, feel free to go ahead and let me know. But for the next 5-10 minutes here, we're going to focus on pins and the conditions that we're going to see for round 4. So round 1 pin is over here close to the water. The first 3 days, it's been away from the water. I'd say round number 1 was the closest that you got to this aquatic penalty area. It was front left over there for round number 1. Now it's going to be front right over here, just over the area. So penalty area. So I would say that it's a hard pin location just because of that aspect. You are going to see a few more doubles made there at hole number 1. But the pin location from the birdie perspective is hardly a change at all. It's the same kind of shot into the screen. In fact, compared to the round 3 pin location, which was closer to the back, but about the same depth into the screen complex, it's not going to change very much at all. It's going to be about 120, 130 yards in. And I would argue that this location closer to the water area has a better backstop behind it. Over here, it was a flat spot, really tricky with the putting. I saw a lot of people missing their putts from 5 to 10 feet. Over here, you've seen a lot more birdies historically, but as I mentioned, a little bit more of a risk with that water to the front side of that green. Hole number 2 is over here on the left side, so it's like left back over here towards this front peninsula. It's an easier pin location because it is towards the front side of the screen complex. There's a downslope, little low area, as you can kind of see from this overhead look right there. If we go over here to hole number 1, which by the way, I think it's probably easier to do it over here on the shot tracker, just because we can actually see the slopes. But if you see over here, there's a little bit of a backstop to that hole over there at hole number 1. But hole number 2, I want to show you that as well. So over here to this back left corner, a little bit of a backstop that you have behind it, which if you're hitting a line shot in, maybe it's a little bit hot, doesn't have as much spin as what you're hoping for. This is going to help you stop it close to that hole. So I would say it's actually a little bit easier than what you had for round number 3. And just to go back to hole number 1, like it's pretty similar. It's about the same distance, same depth of the green as what you had for round number 3. Just maybe a few more big numbers because of that false front in that aquatic penalty area. Next up, we have hole number 3, which hole 3 is going to be in this like middle back, and this is on top of the slope that you have throughout that green. So if we go to hole 3, you'll see the slope that I'm talking about. It was in the low area today. So it was down there where it was easy to access. A bunch of people were making birdies. Up on top over here, it is a lot more difficult. It essentially shrinks the green in half in terms of its size, playing over here to the right side. And if you miss to the right side, it's not a particularly easy up and down either. Hole number 4 is going to be, let's see, in the back, it looks like back right. I'd say this is a difficult one. It's already a long par 4 to begin with, over 500 yards. It'll play like 520 yards over here to the back corner. And what I think makes this more difficult is that you can't really run it up onto the green. If you were to miss in the rough or maybe in that bunker over there on that left side, if you had a good enough lie, you could run it off this front collar, this front approach, and get it onto the green, or at least next to the green hole high over here in 2, which was a pretty simple up and down pot guider. Didn't get the job done, which unfortunate over there for the young South African. But this back right corner, you don't have that luxury. It is all carry. You see these bunkers that you have in front of the green over here. It's going to be a harder pin location. So I mentioned that maybe the pins would look a little bit easier. Hole number 2 was kind of an example of this, but hole 4 is a typical Sunday pin location. One where they're trying to ratchet up the difficulty a little bit. Hole number 5 is a par 3. It's over here on this front corner. This is an easier pin for sure than what we had for moving day. It's towards the front side. You don't have to carry it over this bunker. And it's far enough into the green where this false front isn't a massive factor either. So T-box, probably not going to move. They haven't moved it at all this week, but if they do move it, it'd have to be shorter because it was completely tipped out for today. Hole number 6, so this is your first par 5 in play. This is going to be a back pin location, but it is going to be a little bit easier than what you had for today. The reason I say that is the sloping around it isn't as drastic as what you have on this right side. Not only was it tucked only 3 paces from this right side of the green, you also had this sloping over here to the left side of this green complex. So over here in the back, you still have a little bit of a false front in front of it, but look at this portion of the green compared to this tiny little sliver over here to the left side. Hole 7 is the drivable par 4. So this one's about 300 yards, and it is a front pin location. So this is by far the easiest pin that you have here at hole number 7, which is yet another example. And I really want to see the par 5s over there on the backside of this course, because I feel like it's going to play a little bit easier on the back. Because the par 5 pins out there for today were a little tricky, especially on the ones that were reachable in 2. So yeah, 7 here, it's already the easiest hole that you have out here for all the par 4s, but another easier pin location there too. Hole 8 is one of the harder holes out here on property, so that one is going to be a back pin location too. So kind of like hole number 5, was it 4 or 5? Let's see. Hole 4 actually is the one I was thinking of, whereas in the back, it's already a 500-yard hole. Over here at hole number 8, it's already a difficult hole to begin with, and now you're giving them that back pin location that is especially protected over there near the water. You've got the water that's maybe 5 paces to the right side, but it's a longer shot in and a more difficult up and down if you miss to the left side. The reason for that is the sloping that you have down the middle. So it's another one of those Sunday pins. There are a few that look pretty difficult, but holes like 6 and 7, they kind of make up for it for some extent. Let's refresh this. It's a long shot, but maybe they posted the pin sheet. Not quite yet. All right, that's all right. Over here at hole 9, we still have it over here in the sports books. It is a back left pin location, which is also another one of these like Sunday pin locations. And the reason I say that is it's tucked over this bunker, and it's a longer shot than what you had for today. Now, if they move up the tee box, it won't play as hard if it only plays to about 150 yards. But if they tip it out and it's about a 185-yard hole, I'd say it's a hair harder than what you had for round number 3. Next up, we have hole number 10. So over here, let's go to the back 9 now. On that side of the golf course, it's a middle right, maybe like a middle right back would be the better way to put it. But over here on this portion of the green complex, it's pretty similar to today, I would say. Maybe a hair easier because it's on the broad side of the green and not tucked just over that bunker to the left. Hole number 11, let's go to that one now. 11 is a front side pin location. So this one looks easier, right? If you're just looking at the pin sheet, you're like, oh, it's on the front. It's got to be easier, right? It's a 180-yard shot, maybe 170 here to this front complex, and you have the water that comes into play at this portion of the green. So I think it's easier than what you had for round 3. This one over the bunker is about the hardest pin that you could have out there at hole number 11, but this one, I wouldn't call it a walk in the park, because if you end up missing short, you're dropping 3 and hitting a shot from about 150 yards, because this is a yellow staked penalty area right there, which means you're dropping a whole long way back. You can't drop where it crosses the penalty area. Next up, you have hole number 12. This is 635 yards. Holy shit. That's right. One of the longest holes that we have out here, and the pin location's in the very back. So that's why it's playing close to 640. It's not only long to begin with, but also tucked the whole way in the back portion there. So a long 2-shotter, that's for damn sure. But the pin location was also used for round number 2. And that pin, it might be a hair harder than what you had for today. The only reason I say that is that it's not like it's easier to reach into. Like, only guys that are getting there are pot guider, right? And he hit it to 10 feet, of course. But people were hitting it up near this green into, especially some of your longer players in the afternoon. It was downwind out there in the PM, and it was pretty easy chip to the front side of the screen. So I would say maybe a hair harder because of that. But if you're a long bomber like Pot Guider and you're going for it in 2, there's next to no difference compared to where it was for today. Hole 13, I keep clicking the wrong tab there. My bad. 13 is in the back left, another par 3. So this is another pin that looks a little easier than today. Sorry, a little harder than today. I got ahead of myself there, but it's actually easier. And the reason I say that is this sloping in front of the green, you can't really get a good perspective for it unless we zoom down and kind of zoom in here. Everything that missed short here went the whole way down into this fairway, if not the whole way down into the rough down here. And you had guys like Harry Hall that made a double bogey here, a whole bunch of bogeys that for people that were missing the green. And this bunker to the left was also a miss that you saw a lot today. Over here on this back corner, it is a longer shot in, but just like some of the other par 3s, like there's a chance they move it up. If they do that, then right, all bets are off. It could play a whole lot easier if they were to do that. But even if they don't, this portion of the green is a whole lot less severe, right? You miss short, you're still on the green, right? You easily 2-putt and make a par. You miss around the green here, it's, I would say, an easier up and down because you don't have this massive slope where it's going down into that rough. So yeah, this is a deceptive one, right? If you were just like looking at it from the overhead view, you go like, wow, that's got to be so much harder than what you had for today. Not so much, actually. Hole number 14. So let's go to the next hole here. So 14 is a par 5. This was one of the ones that was pretty difficult today. It was way in the back corner, as you guys can see there. For tomorrow, it's on the front side. So this is what I mean by the pins maybe being easier for tomorrow. There are going to be a lot of bogeys out there. So I actually think the bogey average. So just to go back to it, based on what we've seen so far, with these Sunday pins, like 5, 8 was a really hard one too. Like you're going to see a lot more bogeys at those 2 holes. Bogey average is going to go up a little bit. I'll definitely say that. However, and it's a big however, this birdie average, I think, is going to go up because of some of these like par 5 pins like we've been going through. Like this one here, hole 14, over here on this front side, over here towards this portion of the green, it's super easy up and down, especially because most people aren't getting to this green in 2. And it's not like you saw a lot of eagles there anyways. Like you're not going to see a lot of eagles to a front pin location on a par 5, but that one is definitely going to have a higher birdie rate. Hole 15, so let's go to the next hole here. This is a medium length par 4. It's an easier pin location. So it's about the same distance as what you had for round 3. Round 3, it was over here in the front left. Round number 4, it's going to be over here on the front right side. So it's further away from the water, a lot more accessible, super simple up and down if you end up missing to the right side over here. So a higher birdie rate because people can go at this pin location as opposed to today where it was close to the water. Look at that slope there too, right? Like you don't want to fuck around with going left there. Over here on the right side, you could afford to go after it, and I think you're going to see a higher birdie rate there. Next up, you have hole number 16, which is the long par 5. Over here in the back right corner, this is another Sunday pin. Like this is absolutely brutal. It's over here on the right side. It's also a front pin location just over a bunker. So you're not going to see any birdies here, but you also had like a 1% birdie rate at hole number 16 today. So, if it goes down from 1% down to a 0% birdie rate, right, you're not talking about a really big difference over here with the scoring. But the really big change here, I would say, is not only the fact that it's just over the bunker, but it's the angle in. So a lot of people here, if you end up missing to the right side, like you can see Pot Guider here, right? He was able to access this side. He had to slice it out of here and run it up to this front left corner. He has no chance in hell, right? Getting over here to this front right side, which is why it's also a little bit harder because unless you bail out to the left, it's a very difficult angle into the screen. And even if you do bail out left, right, like most players are hitting it near these bunkers to the left side. Like this is Pot Guider who hit this, right? You got to remember, this is like the longest player in the world. They hit it this far. Most of your other players are way back here. If they bail out to the left over here in the rough, that's a difficult angle even from back there, right? The whole way across, you got to carry it a whole long way. You also have these bunkers in front, so you can't run it up. That one's definitely going to play a little bit harder. Hole 17 is a par 3. It is in the back left. Oh, this one's brutal. Now, there's a really, really good chance that they move up the tee box here because this back left pin location, if you play it to 220, I mean, it's impossible. I mean, look at this, right? At least today when they moved the tee box over there, you had the angle into this green. Like, look at all this room you had. You had like 15 paces to get close over here. With this bunker in play, if they play it from its normal tee box, which, by the way, is over near my cursor, you can kind of see like those dark blue boxes over there. That's where the normal tee box is over here for hole number 17. If they play it way back there, it's like 240 yards. It's even longer than what you had out here from round number 3. And the angle is impossible. So I would say that there's a good chance they move up the tee box, but maybe they see fuck it and don't do it just to go out there and screw with these players, which kind of be funny too. And then finally, 18s, you're finishing par 5. This one is over here on the right side. So this is a front right, or maybe not front. It's like kind of in the middle over here on the right side. I would actually say a little bit easier than today, just because you don't have this bunker to deal with. I mean, Pot Guider had to deal with that, right? There was no way he could go for the pin because of that bunker to the right side. And even guys like a Campbell in the last hole ended up hitting in the bunker and had a pretty difficult up and down. So, a lot of players took care of it, as you saw, but it's I'd say a little bit easier over here because you have more room to get up and down if you miss. So the eagle rate will go up as well, right? Just over this bunker, it was very difficult to get close to this pin location. Over here on the right side, it's at least feasible that someone could hit it to like 10 to 15 feet. So in general, yeah, I think conditions are going to stay about the same strokes wise. Like they might get a little easier actually, just because I don't think the winds are going to be as bad in the afternoon. Undoubtedly though, birdie average goes back to at least 4.5 per round. I actually think it might go up to like 4.6 per round. Your bogey average, though, I also think is going to go up. So I do think that the difference in birdies is going to be larger than the difference that we have for this bogey average, But based on the setup that we have, it's kind of a unique situation over here. I think that both averages are going to go up. So a little bit of a different narrative than what we had out there for round number 3. But based on the weather, those locations that we just went through, that's my read over there for moving day. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through the prize picks board. Let me go ahead, refresh the screen over here. Let me see if we have anything over there on the underdog side, which before we went live, they didn't have a board posted, but it's been 20 minutes at this point. It's still nothing posted. I was assuming if we gave those slappies enough time that they could get something posted, but hey, prize picks is the bigger site anyways. So let's go ahead and focus on over there. What's going on, Birdie Man? Happy Saturday. Curious what my thoughts are on Batia. Commentators are going on about him looking tired. I think that narrative is probably going to keep the ownership a little bit lower. So if you're playing a DFS, I think there's some upside there. But if you're like betting on him, that sort of thing, that's where you've got to weigh that kind of concern. Now, the reason why DFS, I think he makes some sense is that low ownership, right, being overlooked is a utility of its own right there. So I would say that he's a high pedigree player, best player that we have in this field for pretty much every single purpose. He's worth a few looks, especially in that kind of format. What's going on, sites? Welcome on in. What do I think the winning score will be? Or do I think it'll be over 23 under? Probably, especially with guys starting at 20, 19 under par. I would say minus 23 is a pretty good target point. I think it'll be right around that number. Could definitely go deeper than that. Deep dive on buttery toasty or burnt toasty tomorrow. So yeah, how does he look out there for tomorrow? Let me bring up Bet the Number. I forgot to bring that up before we went live over here, which is always my go-to, right? They're obviously the sponsor of our channel for a lot of these pieces of content and the most accurate site. I've noticed a lot of players over there in Data Golf that have incorrect shots gained metrics. Like, for example, I was on the Ship It Nation stream last week, and I had a question about a disparity out there with the shots gained metrics. Well, I did my homework after the fact to figure out what site had it right, and it was Bet the Number that had the actual numbers. So there's countless other examples of that happening as well. So let's go through it. So good old Toasty heading into Sunday towards the top end of the board. So in DFS does have some placement point potential. To this point of the week has been fantastic from tee to green, into the positive in all 3 of those categories. In round number 3, it was the exact same. I mean, I think that you're looking at some buttery toast, I guess, right? Some maybe throw some cinnamon on there, some butter. I used to have that as a snack when I was growing up, a little bit of a poor kid's toast. Cheers to that. I think he's a pretty good play for tomorrow. What's going on, Joseph? So what are my thoughts on Thurston Lawrence? Is he going to go after every single pin? Yeah. He's a very aggressive player to begin with. One of the most aggressive players off the tee that you'll ever see. And yeah, starting so far back where he pretty much has nothing to lose, you're exactly spot on. He's going to go after it. Sites asked about Brian Campbell. He said, is he going to crumble on Sunday? I kind of hope so, at least for my main slate exposure. But if we take a look at the shots gained metrics, man, nothing would tell us that he's going to. In fact, over there on the Showdown stream that I did on the Ship It Nation YouTube, I mean, he's gaining over 5 strokes on approach. I said if you just kind of like took the names away over here from the slate and you just looked at the shots gained profiles, that Brian Campbell probably has the most attractive, because of the guys in the top 5, I mean, he's gaining by far the most strokes on approach. So I don't know. I hope he does, but the stats wouldn't say that. Oh God, you can already see Pot Guider smoking one in the water on 17. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting tomorrow, man. I didn't get him at the Farmers, so that blow up, I didn't end up having any like emotional connection to that. But I've had some of these young guns that have the lead through 54 holes before, and I've had a lot of them crush me before in this kind of scenario. So there's a reason why he was 82.5 to 1. He is close to even money to go out there and win. So, you know, we've definitely got a chance to go out there and cash the outright bet. But like you said, dude, that could easily happen. I mean, hell, 18, you could go out there and make a mistake, hit it way into the right trees. There's a lot of ticking time bombs around this golf course. For as easy as it is, for as much as it is a resort style course, there's also a lot of water in play around here. What's going on? What is wrong with Akshay? Feels like that's the worst round he could have shot. I agree with that. I've got to say, I didn't have any exposure there, so I wasn't tracking him as much as some other players. But it looks like he had so many birdie lucks, especially early in the day. He didn't take advantage as many as he probably should. And then when he got to the hard holes, which is like 8 through 10, so a really hard stretch, he got hit really hard. So I feel like he's a bounce back candidate. He's got to keep his energy levels up, though. That's for sure. Maybe get some coffee in them, maybe a little Red Bull out there too. Thanks, Luke. Had the poor kids toast myself as a kid. Yeah, it's a staple up there in the Northeast, that's for sure. It's damn good though, right? If you know, you know. You had potty at the Ned Bank and you're ready to get hurt again. Oh, so yeah, you did. You know the deal already. I was sweating that myself too, actually, Birdie. I had some strokes lines unders on him heading into Sunday. Thoughts on the round score of 69.5. So yeah, let's talk about some of these props. So the first one I want to point out here is this under on Jaeger, which we'll talk about here in a second. 69.5, the Rays got to shoot -2 or better to go out there and win. He's not in the kind of position where he's up by like 5-6 strokes. He can go out there and coast to a victory. Yeah, him going out there and having an average round or better is, I would say, a very reasonable thing. In fact, the slip that we're going to take here together, I already like this under on Jaeger. We'll talk about that after I go through here with Potgator. But these guys towards the top can't, go out there and coast. This isn't a major championship. It's not a U.S. Open out there on Sunday. With a scoring average that I think is going to get a little bit easier tomorrow. Part of that is the winds kicking down in the afternoon. It doesn't look nearly as blustery out there in the PM hours. Also, some of those pin locations, especially like the par fives, look a little bit easier. So these kind of players that are in form, they're hitting the ball well, right? Not making all those kind of mistakes. They take advantage of a few more par fives this time, but they still only go out there and maybe make like 2-3 bogeys on the round, right? Shooting -2 or better for a pot guider, like that feels very reasonable. Jaeger over here at 68.5. He's not plus EV value compared to a lot of these sports books, but I feel like that's a very reasonable thing to ask. In fact, you take a look at Potgator, so he's about even money, it looks, over here on Draftkings. Let me see what he is over here on the Fanduel side. I'm assuming also pretty close to even money, but no line, I guess, actually, over there on that side. I guess Caesars William Hill will have to be our tiebreaker between these few players. And -120 over, yeah, so it's like maybe the smallest of all leans over there towards the over. The under is what I would personally be eyeing. Now, maybe we can find a better prop to take for these two players that is a slightly better plus EV value, but we'll have to see what we have for the board. I was glancing through it a little bit before. Looked like there were a few spots that we could get to. What odds are Berger and Lowry going off at next week, do I think? Sorry if that's off topic. I'm all good with the off-topic questions, especially when it's my hometown event. By the way, guys, if you guys don't know, I'm from Palm Beach, so I'm going to be at the event for all 4 days. I'll be there Tuesday, Wednesday. I'm scouting out some players in the golf course, so boots on the ground action the entire week next week. If you're wondering on the length of the rough, firmness of the course, you're not going to have to worry about that at all. We'll have that answered. But those two guys, like I see Lowry at like 25, 30 to 1 most likely. He'll be one of the favorites. Maybe 20 to 1 if the sports books are really taxing us. And then a Berger, probably like 40 to 1. That'd be my guess out there on those two players. I mean, if we get like a Berger at 50, I'm smacking that. If we get a Lowry at like 35 to 1, 40 to 1, I'll be smacking that as well. But it definitely feels like both of them are going to be a hair lower when it comes to their outright odds. By the way, Jordan Spieth's playing this year. I've got a feeling on my guy Jordan. I'm just going to throw that out there right now. There is a 100% chance that I'm betting Jordan Spieth, and it's going to be a big boy bet over there at the Cognizant. We're not going with a normal 1 unit bet. It's probably going to be a 2 or 3 unit over there on Jordan Spieth. Let's go through this board a little bit more. So we already had these two that I was looking at a little bit earlier. We'll have to see if maybe there's a better line to take for these two golfers. But these two towards the top, they're in form. We know they fit this golf course well. With the conditions in the afternoon not looking nearly as windy, I don't think you have to worry about the conditions like we did for today. Even despite that, right, both went well under both of these lines. So if conditions are going to be easier tomorrow, right, that's not something that I'm all that worried about. Now, if we had Aldrich at 4.5 birdies, I'd be all over taking that sort of over. But a 5 birdie line for Steven Jaeger, like, might be the way to go about this, because not only do I think that the birdie average is probably going to be 4.5, 4.6 per round, he's a well above average birdie maker, putting him in at least a 5 projection, but he has to be aggressive. I mean, he's starting so far behind those top two. I mean, 3-4 strokes, right, is nothing to scoff at in terms of trying to make up strokes. He's going to have to go out there and try and make a shit ton of birdies. So we know for a fact that he's going to be going after pin locations. Maybe we take, I mean, I think both of them kind of make sense. Like I could be for the under on strokes and the over on birdies here, but that's another one that we're going to have to go out there and weigh. So let's go to this board a little bit more. 5.5 on Akshay again. A lot of 5s for some of your elite tier players. Your 4.5s, just like round number 3, are a lot of your slapdicks. Now, of the slapdicks, I'd say Joel Damon's probably the best out of the bunch, just because his approach play has been good. He's also played a lot better his last few events. But in a perfect world, right, we'd be getting guys like maybe a Højgaard at 4.5. Like maybe they'd post a Ben Griffin, right, over there at 4.5 birdies. Then I'd be a lot more excited about going over and taking those overs. So as is, right, Steven Jaeger, I think, is probably the one that's the most mispriced of all those guys there at 5 birdies. But let's see what else we have posted. So they've got Potgieter versus a Svensson matchup. Jaeger versus Springer. These are all 0.5 matchups. So, of course, a tie on birdies would mean that it's an under, just something I'm going to throw out there as a little bit of a PSA. So, let's take a look at the fairway board. Fairway board looks pretty similar to the first few rounds. They do have Brian Campbell on there, a little bit of a difference out there compared to the first few days. And then greens regulation, a whole bunch of guys at 12.5. A lot of the same faces that we had for round number 3. And all the guys that ended up going over that we bet, we're taken off the board. So kind of annoying that they went out there and did that. But a Potgieter greens, let me see where he's been this week. So we don't have any sort of like historical data on how many greens he's hit, but I do want to see what he's done for the first few days. So day 1 hit 14, day 2 hit 15. Today only hit 11 of his 18. So yeah, the 12.5, I mean, that seems like a pretty reasonable line, at least based on what we just saw for what he's done so far. I think the average is going to stay around that 12.3 to maybe 12.5 mark that I projected for yesterday. Yeah, these are all pretty close to 50-50s, I would say. In fact, maybe the battle rate under on greens could be a little bit of a look, because if we take a look at the averages from last year, so let's go over here to approach. Let's bring up greens and regulation. And we're going to go back to 2024, so we have a whole year sample size to look at. But Aaron Baddeley here is number 165 on the PGA Tour when it comes to greens and regulation. And I'm not sure where he left at today. I actually bet his under, and he went over today. So he was one of the few low spots in our props. We ended up making a bunch of money on our props today. So I can't say that I'm all that worried about it. He actually went under? Wait, I didn't realize that. I thought for sure that he went over his green and regulation line. By the way, just to tell you why, he was at like 11 through like 14 holes or something like that. He only had to hit like 2 for his last 4. So he missed 15. He missed 16. He missed 17. Look at so through 14 holes, right? So this is why I thought he went over. This is crazy. Okay, so I guess that's good to know, right? Today he had his like best iron day ever. He gained like a stroke over there on approach. I gotta say, I like Baddeley. He's one of my favorite players. We got the same flow going right over there with the hair, but he hit 12 today, even with all that good iron play. Yeah, this under is probably something I'm going to end up mixing in. So yeah, number 165 on tour, as we just went through out there last year, is not the best ranking, to say the least. And then over here for pars or better, I do think that the average for bogeys is going to go up. I wasn't so sure about that before we went live here, just because I thought that the pin locations might get a little bit easier. They did get easier on the scoreable holes. Like, it's not just 14. It's not even just like 18, right? That looks a little bit easier. It's even like 7, right? The drivable par 4 looks a whole lot easier. But then you have holes like 4, 8, 16. I mean, like, they look like absolute brutes. If you're not an absolute bomber off the tee, I mean, you're screwed on a lot of those holes. Could be some overs on bogeys that we could take. Now, to go over here to the bogey or worst tab, they do have some guys posted. It's a lot of your elite tier players, so we can't really compare them to the slapdicks that they have posted. But like Brian Campbell is there at minus 145 for his over. So I do think he sets up well, but he is short off the tee, right? If the nerves are ever going to come up and get you, it would be on Sunday. So it kind of looks like we have 2 slips that we could go with here, right? I guess we'll pick our favorite Steven Jaeger prop, which, by the way, if you guys have a take on that, let me know down in the live chat. I'm still kind of 50-50 on which one of these to take, but we take one of these positive stance plays, mixing them with one of these fades. Could be a slip we go out there and enter. Now, this Aldrich one, I've got to say, I'm still kind of 50-50 on that one myself. Sounds like Luke Christmas next week. Yeah, dude, it's going to be a lot of fun. Hell, the last 5 years I've done content for it, it's an absolute blast. I got to say, it's tiring. By the end of the week, I am exhausted because I'm out there in the golf course all day. I do my content after. I'm staying up late, but it's fun. That's for sure. I wouldn't trade it for anything. You love my positivity, but you think Lowry will be 16 and Berger 25? Yeah, I mean, if they are, they're probably not bets. But hey, if you get those better odds, I'll take them. Enjoy the tournament. Should be awesome. Looking forward to it. Smalley went under somehow. Yeah, he went under on greens. Yeah, he missed a few more than he should, but I still think he would be a solid over. Like, if they posted him at 12.5 again, he'd be an over I would take. If they posted guys like Fishburne at 12.5 greens, like elite tier iron players, I'd be looking for him. Now, Fishburne missed the cut, right? So he's not going to be out there for round 4, but yeah, kind of surprising, Daniel. Did not expect to see that myself. Luckily, our pairing with him also didn't end up hitting. So it didn't end up costing us a cash or anything like that. So this Aldrich prop, I do want to take a positive stance for him because I don't think he's just going to back down, especially with the easier conditions that we're expecting. You know, the birdie line at 5, that's not really something I want to go out there and take. Like, I'd rather have that -2 rounds. Like, I mean, his birdie line's the same as Steven Yeager, right? So at that point, you think you'd rather take that side. But let me see what they have on FanDuel. They really don't have him posted. They have him under Aldrich? No, they have nothing on there. I think I'm just going to say fuck the sportsbook odds and go out there and enter it anyways, because it feels like a prop that makes a whole lot of sense. So we're probably going to go with these 4. Let me see. All right, let's do with these 4. So we're not going to take a 4-man slip. We're going to split these up into 2 different slips. We're going to go with Steven Yeager. We're going to pair him up with this Aaron Baddeley prop. That's going to be the first slip that we go out there and mix in. The other one's going to be the Aldrich prop. And then we're also going to take the under on pars or better over here for Brian Campbell. So by taking the 1 fade in each slip, it does give us the full 3x payout. Now, if you wanted to get frisky about it, because we have 2 fades and 2 positive stances, you could conceivably go out there and enter it for the 4-leg slip. If you did that, it would pay 10x. So that's the only thing I'll mention about that. But in the past, if you would have entered this sort of slip over here in Prize Picks, this would have been like 15x. So that's why I don't usually enter these 4-man slips like this anymore, because in the past, you'd be getting such a better payout for a slip that's kind of structured this way, which is why I prefer those 2 3x's instead. So, do whatever your heart desires. Maybe only like 3 out of the 4 props. You can run a 3-man if you want to. Maybe only like 2 out of the 4 and you run a 2-man. Hell, maybe you like 0 out of the 4, right? You don't want to play any of them in your exposure. It's fine, right? Obviously, do whatever you guys want to do with your money. Bay Hill Players Masters, how many of those are Scotty taking down? Ooh, out of those 3, I think he takes down 1 of those this year. Last year, went for the holy trifecta, but I think he's going to have a little bit of a harder time this time around. It's difficult to win a major championship, go out there and win at an elite tier venue like that. The year that he had last year is probably his capstone year. So I'll say 1 of the 3, and hey, winning 1 of those 3 golf tournaments is still a hell of a year. I mean, you could win 1 of those tournaments and feel pretty good about what you did. I'm sure he'll win 1 of those and then maybe even add another major championship on top of that. Now, over here on Underdog, I was going to try and see if they had anything posted. They do have a DP World Tour kind of stuff posted, but nothing over there on the PGA Tour side. So, unfortunately, not going to be able to give you guys anything on that side. But a lot of what we already talked about over here on the Prize Pick side, you could just take over there to Underdog, because 99% of the time they just copy and paste the board over there from Prize Picks, which by the way, if we went and compared this over here on the DP World Tour, it's almost for sure going to be the same exact thing. Now, they do have these tournament finishing positions that they go out there and throw in, and I'm talking about your strokes and birdie or better lines are almost exactly the same out there from tournament to tournament. So let's see. So yeah, 4 birdies out there for pretty much everyone. Connor Syme was the one I was using for comparison. And then do they have Syme at 71 strokes? So Syme's over there at 70 actually. And then over here at 70? Sorry, he is actually at 70. I was misreading over there with the Connor Syme line. So yeah, copy and pasted the board over there from site to site. So I can't say that I'm all that surprised by what they've done, but what we said over here for Prize Picks, if you're only on the Underdog side, just take these same sort of players if they have those same kind of lines posted. Now, in terms of what I'm looking for out there in matchups, I had a few kind of already picked out. For the round 3 stats, some of the poppers that we're looking for, I really like how Blade Brown looks on the stats. I played him today for a 3-ball at plus 260. He went out there and was able to cash for me. But these guys that gained a whole bunch of strokes to their irons are the kind of players that I'm looking for out there on Sunday. The Henrik Norlander, who gained over 2 strokes on approach and then lost with the putter. Who else checks the boxes? So we could look at Isaiah Salinda, had a really good iron day, but lost with the putter. Nikolai Højgaard also gained with the iron play and then lost about a stroke with the flat stick. These sort of players are the ones that I'm looking for in their 3-ball matchups. Now, because we're so close to the end of the round, we're not going to have a lot of this posted on the books to actually go through. But my process is to try and find these ball striking poppers matched up against guys that were maybe a little bit short game heavy. And what I mean by short game heavy are players that were gaining 2-3 strokes, whether it's over there with their putter or over there around the green. These two categories a lot of times come down to that variance. So, for example, like a Chan Kim, a Joel Damon up there towards the top, pretty much anyone that was gaining over 2 strokes in either of these two categories are players that you might want to raise a little bit of a red flag on. And if we can find one of these ball striking poppers that we just mentioned matched up against one or maybe even 2 guys that got lucky in the short game categories, that's where you can find a lot of plus EV leans over there when it comes to your matchup bets. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it off there. Like I said before, got to get to watching some of these UFC fights. Before the stream started, had some sweats going over there for UFC. So we'll have to see how it's going over there and holding up. But best of luck with all of your exposure over there for Sunday. Of course, guys, for all the exposure I'm going over there and playing, for every slip as I play it, make sure to check out my Patreon page. On there, not only can you get all of those pieces of exposure, but also all the stat averages that I'm doing for any given event, also the weather forecast updated for every single round, and all the thought process and research that goes into me finding these plays. So on the live stream, right, I'd like to give you guys a little bit of a taste from going out there and entering, but for all of that and the stuff I enter on top of what we've already looked at, the Patreon is the place to be for that. And I've been posting some of the 3 balls matchups over there in my Discord as well. So when we finally get the boards on Hard Rock Bet and I'm able to go out there and see what we have for 3 balls, I'll post some stuff over there as well, over there for round number 4. But that's all I've got, guys. Appreciate you guys stopping by. And yeah, Masters for Scotty, that feels like a pretty good spot for him. Celinda is one to watch this year as well. I agree with you on that one, dude. Super long off the tee. I mean, mashes the ball. And yeah, these guys that are fresh out of college, they all hit the ball a long way. And if they were one of the top guys in college, they were good iron players too. So you hit the nail on the head there. You won second in the 200K sand trap, dude. Dude, cheers to that, dude. I will get another glass of whiskey after we get off the live stream for you there, dude. That must have been a pretty big score. I'm not sure what second place paid out there, but I'm sure quite a bit. I'm sure it was 5 figures, if not close to that. So congrats, dude. I love to hear that from you down there in the live chat. And hey, let's run it back for Sunday, right? The only thing better than a GPP takedown is doing it in back-to-back days. So that's all I've got, though, guys. Smash the like button before you guys hop on out of here. That's the only thing I ask from you guys down there in the live chat. Also, subscribe so you guys don't miss any of the content to come, including all that from the Cognizant next week. If you guys want that boots-on-the-ground info, subscribe so you guys can see my course breakdown, my full thoughts on the setup for this year, and get in the Patreon page and in the Discord, that's a part of the Patreon page, for all the real boots-on-the-ground stuff. If you think I'm tweeting out or telling you guys about the guys I see struggling on the range, I hate to say it, but I'm not going to. That's going to be kept to the people that are paying me behind the paywall a little bit, because what's the good in knowing if a piece of chalk is struggling on the range if everyone knows and they're no longer chalk out there in the GPPs, right? I've done that in the past. I've thrown out some range reports and they've worked out really well for DFS. Well, this time they're going to be for the people that are, ponying up, right? We're going to keep the advantage there as well. So make sure to check out all of that, and I'll see you guys for all the content throughout the week.